President Donald Trump kept a limited public schedule today as attention remained focused on U.S. policy toward Iran and growing questions surrounding diplomatic efforts in the Middle East. According to the White House schedule, the president spent much of the day in private meetings, including policy discussions and closed-door events that were not open to the press. The limited public appearances came as questions continued over the status of possible negotiations between the United States and Iran. Earlier this week, President Trump said Iran had requested a meeting and suggested talks would take place in Doha, Qatar. However, Iran's foreign ministry later denied that claim, stating that no direct meetings or negotiations with the United States are currently scheduled. Reports indicate that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and other American officials are traveling to Doha for discussions with Qatari officials and regional partners. However, Iranian officials maintain that they are not participating in direct talks at this time. The conflicting statements have created uncertainty over whether diplomacy between Washington and Tehran is making progress or remains stalled. Speaking at the White House, President Trump described the situation as potentially important, but acknowledged that it remains unclear whether any diplomatic breakthrough will occur. The developments come amid continued regional tensions following recent military exchanges involving U.S. and Iranian forces. Meanwhile, President Trump also addressed energy prices, urging gasoline retailers to lower prices for American consumers. In a post on social media, the president argued that crude oil prices have declined and said retailers should respond by reducing prices at the pump. He also criticized California's fuel taxes, arguing they contribute to higher gasoline prices for drivers in the state. Energy analysts note that retail fuel prices are influenced by several factors beyond crude oil prices, including refining costs, transportation expenses, taxes, and expectations about future supply and demand. Concerns over shipping routes through the Strait of Hormuz also remain a major focus for global energy markets. The waterway handles a significant share of the world's oil exports, and any disruption could affect international energy supplies and fuel prices. Although commercial shipping continues through the region, analysts are closely monitoring military activity and diplomatic developments for signs of further escalation. Back in Washington, President Trump also discussed domestic priorities during remarks at the White House. He once again emphasized the Republican-backed SAVE Act, describing it as one of his administration's most important legislative goals. The proposal would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. Supporters argue the measure is intended to strengthen election security, while opponents contend it could make voter registration more difficult for some eligible voters. The president also downplayed the importance of a bipartisan housing affordability bill that recently passed Congress with broad support. The legislation includes measures intended to increase housing construction, reduce regulatory barriers, and expand opportunities for first-time homebuyers. Although White House officials previously praised the proposal, President Trump indicated that his primary focus remains election legislation. Housing affordability continues to be one of the country's top economic concerns as many Americans face rising home prices, elevated mortgage rates, and increasing rental costs. Meanwhile, questions about the broader economy remain central to political debate. The administration continues to argue that its economic agenda will strengthen long-term growth, while critics point to ongoing affordability challenges affecting households across the country. Political attention also shifted to New York City following recent primary elections. Several progressive candidates performed strongly, including mayoral nominee Zohran Mamdani, whose campaign has focused heavily on housing affordability, public services, and lowering the cost of living. Supporters say those proposals address everyday economic concerns facing residents, while opponents argue the policies would expand government spending and increase taxpayer costs. The results have renewed debate over the direction of both major political parties as they prepare for upcoming elections. Meanwhile, President Trump signed an executive order supporting what is commonly known as the Right to Repair initiative. The order is intended to make it easier for consumers to repair certain products and equipment without unnecessary restrictions, an issue that has drawn support from consumer advocates and some manufacturers. The administration described the move as part of a broader effort to reduce costs and increase consumer choice. As lawmakers continue debating election legislation, housing policy, energy prices, and foreign affairs, the coming weeks are expected to remain politically significant both in Washington and overseas. You're listening to our National Affairs Bulletin. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more national and international news throughout the day.